Hello and welcome to the garden blog. It's June 15th. It's a little rainy and I think this is the last vlog we're going to do before it's actually time to harvest some things. So, like usual, we're going to start with the herb section. So here we can see the flowers that I planted. After a couple weeks they're finally starting to grow. They're really popping off. They're liking the rain, and so am I. It's less attention I have to pay in watering everything. We've transplanted the sage plant and he's not doing too well. He might not make it and we might have to replant sage soon. Over here the dill is really sprung up. Got quite a lot of dill, as my wife put it. We're dillionaires. The rosemary's finally starting to grow. The cilantro I think is about where it's been. I can't really see much growth. There seems to be a little bit of tiny leaves growing, so that's the only reason I even remember it's cilantro. Over in the oregano bucket, we can see the oregano's finally starting to take off. Strangely enough, we have a sprig of cilantro growing in there. We're just leaving it there because the basil is really sprung up. We've used some of the basil since then. I've made a nice basil syrup, and I made some lemonade and put that in there. Basil syrup and lemonade is very good, so highly recommend. Over here we have the parsley. Parsley is doing well. The thyme here is finally starting to grow. It's really starting to actually form and not just be little seedlings. The basil I transplanted here is growing well. This yarrow plant I think might be starting to die. It's unfortunate, but he was an accidental growth to begin with, so I'm not too terribly disappointed. If we're speaking of disappointments, though, over here we can see the potatoes are no longer with us. Last week, on June 8th, I was checking the potatoes and I noticed the leaves were starting to look a little black, and they seemed to have had late potato blight. So we harvested them. It was way too early, so the potatoes were pretty small. We planted 10 seed potatoes in all, and we got 28 usable potatoes total of varying sizes. So it's a little upsetting that we had to pull them because they got blight, but luckily they were still edible and they were still delicious, as you would expect from potatoes. So now what we have in here is we have some broccolis that I've moved from that bed. We've moved them because the broccolis have really been exploding, and we just needed to make room because they were growing right next to each other, and broccoli takes up a lot of space. And then here we have some smaller broccolis that we transplanted, as well as some cauliflower that we've planted fresh in here. So this is now the third time that I've replanted cauliflower, and I hope we finally have some luck with it. Cauliflower is turning out to be a very finicky plant. Coming over to the OG broccoli, we see these guys have gotten huge. I think we'll be getting some actual broccoli crowns soon. And over here we can see there's two here that are just completely overshadowing the rest, so they're kind of choking out these smaller guys. This guy's also gotten pretty big. However, I'm kind of out of room in our garden, so this is just going to be how it is with the broccolis. Hopefully everything works out. Moving over to the big beds, we can see the beans are doing nicely. They actually had some flowers starting to grow, and I believe the beginnings of the beans come out of the flowers, so hopefully within the next week or two we should have some beans. I think that will line up about 45-55 days since I planted them, which is what the seed packet promised me. Over here we have the spinach, which is still a little sad. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, or if the spinach just takes longer to grow than I gave it credit for, because we still had the original spinach here in the middle, and they're finally starting to get like some sizable leaves. So I don't know if it was just slow or if it was cold or what happened, but that's the status of our spinach. Now, these two beds here, we can see some quite massive growth. We'll start over here. We can see now there's some extra plants here. Last time I mentioned I had planted some shallots. The shallots did not take, so what we decided to do was move a little bit of the beans and some of the tomato plants that were growing in that bed and put them in here, because as you can see the tomato plants are huge now, so they needed some room to breathe. And this guy, he was definitely shocked when we moved him. He was about this big when we moved him. Luckily we've nursed him back to health thanks to some diligent watering and some strategic umbrella shading. There's a little firefly hanging out. That's cool. You can see we've also moved the garlic for what feels like the millionth time, and they're still hanging in there. Onions still doing fine. Here's some littler tomatoes. The cucumbers and the loofahs. We can see some of the loofahs are finally growing more vines or leaves or what have you, whereas some were just getting completely destroyed by slugs, which I've set up a little slug trap there. If you don't know, you can kill slugs and earwigs with a little container that's got some soy sauce and vegetable oil in it. I'm not going to explain the science of how that works because I don't know. And here are the cucumbers, and we can see there's actually a teeny tiny little flower right there. And then here we have another firefly. That's cool that they're just hanging out here. And over here we have the big old tomato plants. These guys have just taken off. We've had a lot of luck with tomatoes this year. Last year, not so much. These guys also have their flowers. There's some flowers there. Flower there. And then a little guy here that's kind of encroaching into the carrots, which the carrots are massive. We'll try and dig in, see if we can find... Yeah, we can see they're quite sizable. They should be ready to harvest by the end of the month, I believe. And over here we have the shallots, and these guys are getting crazy. You can see they're just shooting up, and I believe they will be ready for harvest around August, so they, I think, would be the last thing in the garden to be harvested. And the peppers, which the peppers are benefiting greatly from the umbrella. The shade and the heat combo, I think, is what peppers want. So that's helping them finally start to get some substantive growth. And then, of course, just basil that's been growing everywhere. I'm not complaining about it. I like basil. And we'll end off with the lilac bush. I did not give an update for that last time, much to my wife's dismay. It's looking quite healthy. And we also got this guy here. I don't know what his deal is. I need to do some maintenance on this bed. Alright, so that's the update. Next video for certain will be a harvesting video. I hope you enjoyed the harvesting footage of the potatoes. And that's it. Have a nice day and goodbye.